Hi there. Okay, so today I want to take you through some of my experiences and opinions on two things: tail stabs and fuselage length. There's not a huge amount of information out there. I found it was quite confusing, hard to find, so I just thought I'll try and figure it out for myself, as well as doing a lot of research and looking things up and comparing what I find out to my own findings. So for tails, to begin with, tail stabs, tail wings, rear stabilizers, whatever you like to call them. These are two that I've got at the moment. I use Go foils. I used to use the L range, that's the Maliko 280 and 200. I've now got the GL range, the 240 and 180. So the high aspect wings. When I used the low aspect range, the Maliko 280, 200 and the EVA, I originally bought it with the Maliko tail, that's the big blue one. I then watched a YouTube video called The Unveiling of the GL series with Alex Aguera and a few other people. And in that video, I think it was it was both Austin Kalama and Alex Aguera who were explaining that this tail, the 18 flat tail, really made the Maliko range much faster. So I thought I'd give it a go. You have to have a pedestal which fits onto the end of the fuselage, and then the tail stab, as they call it, fits onto the pedestal. Now, I was amazed at how much of a difference it made. The Malikos are slow. They are designed to be slow. They've got incredible lift, very, very stable and predictable, easy to handle. They are perfect for beginners and beyond. You know, I mean, the EVA has been used by so many people in you know, massive waves and you know, downwinding. They are still amazing. Well, they are still amazing. But when you go over to the GL range, the high aspect ratios, I don't know anybody who's gone over to the high aspect wings and then said, nah, I'll go back to the slow ones. You just can't. They are incredible. Anyway, back to tail stabs. Changing over from the Maliko tail to this tail setup made the Malikos feel like they weren't tripping up at speed. With the normal Maliko tail, and I've heard people say with the Kai tail as well, you get to a certain speed and that's it. You just cannot go any further, any faster. And if you try and push it, then it feels like they're about to blow out. You know, you're about to just lose it. But by using this, it pushed the performance way beyond. You know, it loosened up the turning a lot. Although it was this has got a very, very skatey turning characteristic. It's fine for it's fine for long, gentle carves. Really nice. But it doesn't have much yaw stability. So this skatey sort of nature, to begin with, I was like, oh my goodness, am I going to cope with this? But very quickly, you just get used to it. And now I really like it. Now I really like it. So this is what started me on this journey of wanting to find out more about tails and later on fuselage length. And the research that I've done, it seems that there are three main styles, three main types of tail. You've got your basic flat tail, which most people would say are very fast. They don't have a hell of a lot of yaw stability, like I've said. They're fine for gentle carving turns. Although having said that, Derek Hamasaki on his GL 180 in this tail, he can crank turns around on a wave like nothing else that I've seen. And he was using this tail, although the narrow one rather than the wide one to begin with. He now uses, I believe, he now uses the wingtip version. So Gopher will do another tail stab now. Basically, it has these raised winglets or wingtips. I believe they call it a flip tip tail stab. I've ordered the 14.5-inch version, and the research that I've done, everybody who uses them say that it gives really good directional stability. It doesn't alter the speed much. Very good directional stability, allows you to pivot turns, really sharp pivot turns, tight pivot turns. So obviously very, very good for that sort of shortboard style foiling. Very much a surf wing, I do believe. Although I've heard people say that the 17.5-inch flip tip tail wing is really good for downwinding, because you get almost as much speed as this one. There's not much in it, but you get that directional stability that some people really like, or I should say some people just don't like the skatey nature of this. So there's the flat, that's the first one. The wingtip tails is the second one, and then you get a curved tail, that's the third one. I haven't used one of those, but what I've read, people say that they're very good out of the... Right, so this is not a surf tail. The curved one and the wingtip tails are predominantly surf tails. And out of those two surf tails, apparently the curved one is better for pumping. Like I say, I haven't used the curved one or a proper wingtip one, but I have used this one. This is the Takuma Lol 270 Tailwing. And it's a bit of a mixture of all of them, really. It's not flat, but it's not hugely curved. You can see there is a bit of a curve to it, but it's not anywhere near as curved as some. It's got little raised winglets. I wouldn't call them anywhere near as raised as the ones I've been talking about, but it does have this very swept back, raked feature to it. Now, I only got this one because it was the only one that I could get hold of. I really wanted to try another style of tail, and the GoFoil ones aren't available to me at the moment. I've got them on order. Since then I've found out that apparently, I can't guarantee this, but apparently the unifoil tails and the signature tails, signature is, I believe, SPG, Signature Performance Gear. So the signature and the unifoil range both have the three styles. They've got the flat, they've got the curved, and they've got the raised wingtips. So all three. I may just get the curved one from Unifoil because apparently they all fit onto the onto the pedestals for GoFoil, as do the Takuma tails. Now, a little bit of a hack for you, because although this curved part here fits perfectly onto the curved part of the pedestal, the GoFoil pedestal, the countersunk side is on the wrong side. So just to get over that, this is thick enough so that I just got my drill with a normal metal drill bit. If you've got a countersink drill bit, that would be perfect, but a metal drill bit, just slightly bigger than the screw heads. And I've just done basic countersinking on there. I've used it a few times since, absolutely no problem. It's not caused any weakness in there because it's thick enough. I wouldn't do it with this because it's so narrow that by the time I've countersunk it enough on this side, it'll be halfway through the countersinking part of this side, and it might not have enough strength because that hole will literally be twice as wide. But this one's a lot thicker there, so I figured I'll take a risk, and it's paid off. So what I can do now is I can put the screws in, and they go just under the, so that, you know, flush is fine, but they're a millimetre under. Whereas before, I used it the first time, it was on there, the screws were sticking up literally like that, and wow, I could feel the drag, really could. So I came in that evening, I did the countersinking, put it back on the next day, and you know, they were flush. Smooth as silk, absolutely smooth as silk, couldn't feel any drag. In actual fact, this is now my, out of the two Tailwings that I've got, this is my favourite for high power, high speed, if you like. It turns so well. It's still a little bit skatey, especially at low speeds. This is why I'm saying it's my favourite for higher speeds, higher power. It's got a lot of lift. I mean, that's 18 inches wide, obviously. This is 14 inches wide, so there's a bit of a difference. And I was worried about the lift, but no, it's got a lot of lift for a little wing. And it turns so smoothly, it's brilliant. It's still a little bit skatey. I wouldn't say, I mean, it holds its grip when you're turning, but in a straight line, especially at low speeds, it's got a little bit of skatey yaw type instability. But when you get it going at speed, it's beautiful, it really is. It reduces the pitch stability a little bit. So with that one, smooth as anything as you're powering out with the wind wing. You know, it's almost like you're on autopilot. You're hardly having to control the pitch at all. Whereas this one, a little bit of concentration needed to keep the micro adjustments all the time for your pitch control. But really, it's so much fun when you're going fast and for turning. I love it. Okay, so let me review. What have I done so far? I've described the three different styles of tail, at least three that I know. I've described the characteristics of these two and what I've found out about the other two, the purely curved one and the wingtip one. Now, I suppose it's time to talk about fuselage length. Now, the GoFoil setup, as you can see, the mast and the fuselage is one piece, and with the Maliko tails or the Kai tail, you just slide the tail on and that's it. But for the newer tails, they have this pedestal setup. So this is the long pedestal. It's 9 or 9.5 inch long, and you've got two screws there. Basically, there's the hole to go through the fuselage. You bash it on there, and then this one here fits on underneath, so that when you're in the water, it's above the fuselage. Now, to my mind, it would be slightly better to have it underneath, because then there's less chance of breaching. But to be honest, with the 32.5 inch mast, hasn't really given me any problems with that. Now, the Takuma tail, I've showed you, the curve fits perfectly on there, and with the countersunk holes there that I've done myself, then there's no drag because the screws are flush. So that will again go on like that, and again it's on top of the fuselage when it's in the water. Now, GoFoil produce a short pedestal. I can't get a hold of it yet. It's not available in the UK. I've tried to find it elsewhere. I live in Oman. It's very difficult to get stuff out here. So a friend of mine told me that there's a guy in, I can't even remember where, I think somewhere in America, who prints on his 3D printer a few things, and one of those things is a short pedestal which fits the GoFoil fuselage. So that's why it's orange and a bit clunky looking. I've sanded it down as best I can because it was very, very rough and you know, the corners and but it's hard to sand this material because if you use an orbital sander, it literally melts the plastic rather than sand it. Anyway, I'm definitely going to get the GoFoil short pedestal as soon as I can, because it's going to be way more hydrodynamic and you know, it's built for the whole setup. But this has given me the chance to test the short and the long fuselage with different tail combos, and it's just been awesome. It really has. I mean, I've said before about how much of a difference changing the tail can have on the characteristics of your foil. But changing the fuselage length is, again, it's another game changer, another dynamic which shouldn't be underestimated. And it's either 2.5 or 3 inches difference. That's the difference, but it has a massive impact. Now, I don't know if this is actually the same on the GoFoil one, but there's a hole there which matches the hole there. And if you turn it over, the rear thread screw is in exactly the same position as that hole, and then you've got the front thread screw there, so those two match those two. Now that's really clever because it gives you the option of mounting it either way up. They also give you these two things. Now this, bizarrely enough, I've been told, although I'm not sure whether they're taking the mick or not, is so you can have like a biplane tail effect. You can like have one tail there, put that on top of it, and have another tail on top. I don't know whether they're having me on or not, but what else is that bit for? I don't know. But this is the important bit for what I'm using now. So there's a curved insert, so that can go on there, so that can then mount on, and it's got the perfect curve to fit this. However, you don't need that because that's flat on top, you can mount it like that. Now, it all depends on what you want to achieve, because I could have, now it needs to be that way around, so on this one, if I was setting it up like this, I would put it like that, because then you've got the curve in the right place. However, why bother? Why not have it that way around? And then, with the flat bit there, you can mount it like that, and then it's underneath, which gives you the extra protection against breaching. So this is how I use it with a short fuse, and it's unbelievable how much better it is for pumping and turning. So, right, disclaimer, at the moment we don't have any waves in Oman, at least not in my local area, and I've been wake foiling, I've been flat water pumping, and I've been downwinding. We've been lucky to have some good wind of late, a lot. Not particularly high wind, but just every day for the last week or two. Now, the short fuse, when you're wing foiling, is a bit of a nightmare because there's so much less pitch stability. So when you're holding the wing and you're bombing out, you're having to concentrate all the time really hard on controlling the pitch. You know, it's going up and down, up and down, up and down. The chop, the swell, the wind, everything is affecting it, and you're having to compensate for that the whole time. So it's a bit of a nightmare. However, when you turn, and then you're riding the swell back, luffing the wing or not, I can see why the short fuse is so designed for surfing, because that lack of pitch stability translates when you're being powered by swell or a wave translates to you being able to control that pitch so much more. Well, you've just got so much more control over it. You can, you know, just really easily. I've never felt so in control when downwinding, from the point of view of if I find myself high up in a lump about to come down. You know, normally it's like, oh, am I going to be able to stop myself from nose diving as I go down, or am I going to be able to, you know, stop myself from breaching? And it just makes that so much easier because, okay, you've got to be a little bit more refined. You can't just shove the nose down or shove too much pressure on your front foot. That'll overdo it. But yeah, you've just got so much more control. So, short fuse, much more control or less stability with pitch, depending on what you're using it for. Now that makes surfing easier. It makes turning, sharp turns a lot easier, and it makes flat water pumping, or even just pumping out to the next wave or across to the next lump of swell if you're if you're downwinding. So yeah, that's that at the moment is what I've found out. Short and long fuse. The long fuse, when you're wing foiling, is by far and away my preferred option. To have the long fuse if I'm sort of low power range, low to mid power range, long fuse with the big flat tail. But again, wing foiling, I would keep the, if I'm in my mid to high power range, I would keep the long fuse, but have the smaller tail. Pretty much anything else, apart from wing foiling, oh, and proper, you know, paddle downwinding. So, you know, I would keep the long fuse. But pretty much everything else, I would go with a short fuse. Yeah. Right. Sorry for rambling. I hope that's given people some information. If you've got any questions, just post a comment and I'll do my best to answer as soon as I can. Bear in mind, you know, I'm not an expert. I'm a keen, very keen intermediate, I suppose. Now, you know, I'm making a lot of progress. I know I've still got so much more to learn, but it's not just the doing, it's the learning. I'm feeling like I'm so excited about this sport because it's, you know, every time I go out there, I feel like I've made so much progress beyond what I thought I would be able to do. So just getting to know the equipment, the combo that I've got at the moment, I would be happy with, I think. And just to use that and nothing else would be awesome. But I'd love to try the curved, the purely curved tail, and I'm definitely getting the 14.5-inch wingtip, upturned wingtip tail, just to see what that's like. So if once I get those, if I find anything dramatically different, I'll try and do an update on this video. But at the moment, my advice is just to practice and try as many new things as you can. But at the end of the day, the kit that you have and that you get used to is the best kit. I find it myself. I find it very easy to get sucked into that. Oh, I've got to have the next best thing. Oh, I haven't got one of those. I've got to have that. That sounds amazing. You know. You can change the characteristics of your front foils by changing the tail or the fuselage length. I mean, that's a hell of a lot cheaper than changing your whole setup or the front foils. There are so many options out there, but sticking with what you've got, like I say, to begin with, this one with a Maliko tail, Maliko front wings, felt awful to begin with, but I didn't have any other option really, so I stuck with it. and now I really love this. I really do. You know, you get over that that skatey nature. In fact, I think it does you good. Your technique's good because you've got to be more refined with your technique. When I changed over from the Maliko front foils to the GL range, I thought, oh, I'm never going to be able to handle this. It was just, you know, so much lack of stability. But after 20 minutes, I was like, oh, actually, this is really nice. And after my second or third session, I was like, oh, I'm loving these. These are great. I'm never going back. So anyway, have fun, enjoy, and if you feel like it, send me a comment or ask a question. Cheers. Okay, I forgot about shimming. So just really quickly, the good thing about any tail that is mounted with 2 screws is that you can place a washer in between the pedestal fuselage and the bottom of the tail itself. And if you do that at the rear, it will obviously raise the rear of the tail, and if you do it underneath the front screw there, it will raise the front of the tail. Now, by shimming or raising the trailing edge of the tail, it's going to give you more lift. And that's really useful for me. I found to learn flat water pumping, I needed a little bit more lift. And that was great to get me going and to help me learn or get used to the technique that I needed. But by increasing the lift, you're also decreasing the speed. It's at the expense of speed. So as I got better, I found I didn't need as much lift. It's the speed, especially with the GL range, because they've got so much glide and speed. You don't need as much, once you've got your speed going, you don't need as much lift. So what GoFoil call the neutral position is when you don't use any shims at all and it's just in the normal position. It's not 100% flat, the tail is slightly raised still, but I find personally that's for me the perfect mixture of lift and speed. I have tried shimming the fronts and I found it gave me a little bit more speed, but it reduced the lift so that you know, you make a mistake, the technique's not perfect, you just lose height and you know, it's for me it wasn't as good. Now, when else would you do shimming? Well, really light wind for wind wings. If the wind is, say, between 6 and 10 knots, I will put a screw underneath the tail to shim the tail up, so a washer underneath there. And that gives me just enough lift to be able to access that 6 to 10 knot range with my 7 meter duotone echo. Yeah, you go slower, but at least you're going. And although I would have to wait for a gust, you know, it would have to be at least 8 to 10 knots for me to actually get up onto the foil. But then in the lulls, you know, down to 6 knots, you can still keep going, and you know, you're still having fun on lively days. When would you need to reduce lift? Possibly if you're surfing big waves. Not so relevant, I don't think, to the GL range because they're so nice. They don't pop up so uncontrollably like the lower aspect foils. You have to engage them to actually get them to come up. Very easily done, but you have to actually control it to do it. So I've never actually had to do that in order to reduce lift, but I can imagine for some foils it could be useful. Anyway, there we go. I hope that's useful, and take care, have fun.